everyone, this is Hellbent and welcome to AutoHotkey GUI short tutorial number 15. In this one I'm going to show you how to recreate this here. So it's just basically a moving banner. So I'm not sure yet if I'll cover how to do that because that's pretty simple, this part here, but a few people have been having difficulty with the actual scrolling banner. But we'll see what I do. Okay. So with this one here, I was debating whether actually including this in the GUI mini tutorials because it's, even though it is technically have to do with the GUI, it's more of a logic problem than a graphical user interface problem. But I was kind of like, I decided that I will go with it this way because the vote, I had like a kind of voting thing in my head where I had 5 points for it to be towards the logic side in the logic tutorials and 6 points for in the GUI tutorial. So it won out just barely. So we're going to do this in the GUI tutorial. But it is more of a logic problem than anything else. Okay, so let's just go ahead and start. So what I'm going to need first is I want to be able to use a variable for certain things. So for my text that's scrolling across the screen, I'm going to use a variable and I'm just going to call it I'm going to call it scrolling text, and I'm going to set its value to the same as I had it in the last one. I don't know how many stars I had in that, but we'll do this. Breaking news. So we got a news banner or whatever you call it. 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, there we go. So I have my variable scrolling text, and in it is assigned this text. Next, what I want is a variable for the X location on the screen for my text banner. So I'm going to set its value to begin with. While we're playing around, I'm going to set it to X10. And I think we're good for that. Now what I need to do is create my text control. So I'll go ahead and add in a text control, and I'll set its position to X, and I'm going to use my X1 variable. So that's its X. I'm going to set its Y to, we'll start with 50. We'll see what 50 does for us. And we don't need, because I'm not going to be changing the value of this, I don't need to allocate a width. But if I was planning on having things change as it's running, then I would need to allocate a certain amount of space to make sure that anything that I place into this variable here, that it has enough space to be displayed on my GUI. But because we're only going to be using this text and only this text, I don't need to worry about a width. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a variable to our text control. So I'm going to call this moving text. So that's the variable. We don't need a label for this, and because we'll start it off with it displaying it, but we don't actually need this to be displayed right now. And once I go into this deeper, you'll see why we didn't need it now. Trying to talk and type at the same time, not very good for me. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have so far. Oh yeah, that's right. This part here, it's going to depend on your screen dimensions, because as you saw with that text banner, let me play it again. As you can see, it takes up pretty much my whole screen. So your dimensions, your screen dimensions are going to be different than mine. So depending on what your screen dimensions are, you're going to have to customize this if you want it to look pretty much exactly the same. But what I can do is I can set X to 0 and I can set Y to 0. So that way it puts it right up in the top corner. Then for my width, my screen is 1350. And we're going to set a height. We're going to start off with 500, but we'll adjust the height as we see fit to later on. And then we're just going to give this a name, and we're going to call it moving text. And we'll once again, because I have a black background, what I need to do is I need to change the color of my text. So I'm going to change it to aqua, same as it was in that. Okay, so here we go. Now I need to decide, is this the proper position? Is this the proper height? Anything that I need to do like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my font. And we're going to go for a size of, let's go with 33. See what 33 does for us. Okay, there we go. I'm happy with that. Okay, so this is my first time recording this, so usually I don't do so well on the first try. Usually it takes 2 times, but we'll see. Okay, so just like with this one here, what we're going to do is we're going to have it so that way we use a button to actually start the program. Now, ideally what you'd want is, the way I'm going to show it here isn't the ideal way because it's going to take up all your processing. Like, you're not going to be able to do anything else. This script is going to be what it's doing, and that's all it's going to do because it's going to have a loop. What you'd really want to do is use a set timer to control this, but because I haven't done the set timer tutorial yet, I'm not going to use that, because then it just opens up Pandora's box where I might have 50 people in the comments asking me, how do you set that set timer thing? What do you do with that? So I'm going to use just a normal loop inside of a G label for a button for this, and then once the set timer tutorial finally does come out, if you have any questions of how you would incorporate this with a timer, then you can watch the timer and then come back and watch this again, and you'll see how you would use a timer rather than just the loop that we're going to be doing. Okay, so let's create a button, and we're going to set its position to X10. Y, let's try 150 and see what that does for us. I'm going to make it cover pretty much the whole screen. So since I've started off at 10, I want it to be even on the other side. And since my width is 1350, I just subtract basically 10 times 2 or 20 from that. So that gives me 1330. But once again, you're going to have to use a number that's representative of your screen dimensions, not mine. So this part you will have to change, and we'll set its height. We'll make it a nice big button. We'll make it 50, and we'll attach this to a label that we're going to call Start Moving, and we're going to write some text on it that says Start Moving Text, and we'll have a look at what we have and make any adjustments we need to. Oh yeah, that's right. I created a call to a G label, but it doesn't exist yet, so I need to add it in. But I'll just add in the label and then the return, and then we'll continue. Start moving. Yes. Okay, there we go. Shouldn't have any errors this time. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm happy with this here, but I'm not happy with the height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the height to get it just underneath the button now. And let's see. We have it. Where's the button? Okay, so Y150. So it ends at Y200, and I'll give it 10 pixels below it. So we're at Y200. So I'll make this 210. Its height 210. And then we should have, okay, there we go. And you know what, I'm not really happy with the size. It looks a little bit too big, so I'm going to change this. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate this border here. So this is, once again, this is a subject that I haven't gotten to yet, but it's really simple. It's a simple control called group box. So all we're going to do is, in here, it doesn't matter where, we're going to add in a group box, and we're going to set its position, I think probably, so our Y is 50, I think probably 10 pixels above it and 10 pixels below it. So I'm going to go with okay, I have to back up a second. With a normal group box, it has 4 sides to it. So as you can see with this one here, I only have 2 sides to it. So what I've done is I've positioned it outside of my GUI on either side. So that's what I'm going to have to do again. But I'll show you a normal group box first, so that way you absolutely 100% know what it looks like. Width 200. I'm just doing this part here just to show a group box. It's going to overlap some of the things that we have on our thing, but I'll show you. Okay, so this is our normal group box. Ignore the fact that it's missing this part and this part, but it's a box. Just highlight it to highlight different controls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position it outside of my GUI, and I'm going to make its width 20 longer than this. So I have it 1350, I need this to be 1370. And that should position it so that way it's outside. There we go. Okay, so here we go. We have our group box, and we can't tell that it's a group box. It's just basically highlighting the text banner in there. Okay, so once again, all I've done is I've positioned it outside, 10 pixels to the outside on this on the left and 10 pixels outside on the right. So that way the 2 sides of it are invisible. Okay, so we have that. Now what we need to do is actually make our text move. So this is the part that's gonna, for those of you that have been waiting for this, this is the part that you're gonna be like, oh my god, I can't believe I did not think of that. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to change our X position of our text. So we have our X1 variable. We're going to change this to the width of our scrolling text. Now, because we don't actually know what the width is, we're going to have to play around with it a couple of times until it's actually outside of our GUI. Just like how we positioned this 10 pixels outside, we're going to have to do the same with this right here, but it's going to be obviously more than 10. So we're going to start off with let's start off with something that I know is not going to be enough, or I'm pretty sure it's not going to be enough, and then that way I can position it just outside. I don't want it to be like a mile outside, I just want it to be just outside of sight. So 100 is definitely not enough. Let's try 200. I know this isn't going to be enough. Let's try 300. Still not enough. Let's try 350. Still not going to be enough, but we're getting close. Let's try 380. And there we go. So now we have our position outside, so we can't see our text. And this is why I said we didn't actually need to put this here, because there's nothing to display right away. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to actually get it to move. Okay, so let me see. I think we can just go right into a loop. Like I said, it's better to do this as a set timer, because this is the only thing that we're going to be able to do, because we're having it in an infinite loop. So any other thing that we want our script to do, it's not going to be able to do it, because it's going to be constantly in this loop. I mean, we can add things into this loop, and then depending on what the situation is of other things that are going on, we can have it execute those. But there's more efficient ways of doing it. A set timer is the better way of doing this. So let's go ahead and create our loop. What we're going to get it to do is every time it runs through this loop, we're going to take our x1 variable and we're going to add, let's start off with 1. So that's plus plus. Let's just add 1 to the x1 variable. So it starts off at minus 380. It'll run through the loop once, and then it'll be negative 379, 378, 370, and so on and so forth. Okay, and next what we're going to do is we are going to check if the starting position, or the if this position here is equal to or greater than the width of our GUI. So if x1 is greater than or equal to the width of our GUI, so once again you're going to have to use a number that's specified, that you specified here for the width of your GUI. So if our x variable, because the x here represents the beginning of our text, so this very first pixel right there is represented by that x1 value. So we're going to check if that is greater than 1350 or equal to it. What we're going to do is we're going to move, let me see, GUI control move, and then the variable that we used for our text, which is moving text, and where are we going to move it? We're going to move it to our starting position. So we're going to say x1 colon equals our starting position of 3 minus 380. And then we're just going to move to our X location. And I think that's good there. Else, we're just going to move Do I need this in an else? I don't think I needed it in an else. It'll be, when it hits this thing here, this next part will be redundant. But yeah, I'll add it into an else. Why not? That'll clear up any confusion that you might have. Okay, so we're gonna, if it doesn't equal greater than or equal to our 1350, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna move. Moving text is our control's name, and we're going to move it to the new value of x1, which normally is going to be just 1 added to its current position. So x1, and I think we have it. Let me see if I have any mistakes. Okay, so when I hit this, it should start moving our text. Ooh, that's a little bit fast. So let's slow that down. Down here, let's add in a little bit of a sleep. And we'll start off with 10 milliseconds. Okay, that's a little bit too slow, so I'm going to make this 2. So it's going to move 2 pixels each time it runs through the loop. Okay, there we go. So once this last star hits this edge here, it's going to reset its position to outside the GUI on this side, and then start the process again. And there we go. That's how you do a moving banner. Okay, so that's how we do this. Now I'm going to discuss quickly other things as well. So let's say I have my GUI. So this is my GUI, and let's say I have a bunch of stars as a background, and I'm making a game or something like that, or wherever, so that way if I move my ship upwards, so let's say if I'm pushing up, I want the stars to seem like as if they're moving in the opposite direction, right? But I don't want to have an infinite amount of stars, or an image that's an infinite amount of stars. So what I can do is I can create an image that has like a repeatable pattern, so that way the bottom looks like it connects with the top, so that way it's, you know, it's nice and uniform. What I can do is I can have, so this number 2, let's say that that's over the screen, and if I move upwards, what it's going to slowly start to do is move this one down into the screen. Once 2 gets all the way out and 1 is all the way in, what I can do is I can put this number 3 up at the very top and replace the position. So as I move forward, it's cycling through. And I can do the same with just 2 of them as well. So as it gets closer, so let's say I'm moving upwards, what I can do is I can move this 2 up to here. And as this 1 drops away and the 2 becomes visible, then once the 2 gets all the way in, I can move the 1 will be in this position, and I can move the 1 back up to the top. Right? Likewise, if I'm moving side to side, I can do the exact same thing if I'm going side to side. But this is how you can do those kind of things. So I can use just 2 images and have an infinite star field where I'm moving. If I was to do where I can move in any direction, so if I can move in this direction, any direction I want, what I would probably do is I would probably make my image, so this black is the representative of the image. What I would do is make my image about 4 times the size of my GUI, and then I would have copies of it. So depending, if I moved up into this quadrant right here, so let's say I'm going to call this a quadrant. So it's 1 image, but this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3. So depending on what quadrant is fully in the GUI, I would place my next big image. I would have to use 2 or 3 of them. I'd have to use about 4 images. So I'd place my next one up there, and so on and so forth. So as it moves into this one, it'll have that replicant right here, so that this one can take its place. And then once this one's completely out of focus, I can hide it and move it to be the next position, just like these 1s and 2s. Okay? I hope I explained that well enough for you to kind of understand what I'm talking about. But you can definitely have an infinite star field or anything that you want just by having a couple copies of it and moving them when they get out of focus. Okay? I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this copy, but I probably will. That's it for this one. Be sure to hit that like button, and see you on the next one.